So remote viewing is not learning anything new. It's unlearning the old system and learning a new system of perception. Nuclear energy tears and rips reality. And after we detonated the first one, 2 UFOs showed up. It scared them. I think the true inhabitants of our planet out in the open. So I came out and they told me, Bob has the target. We actually don't know. I asked Bob for the envelope. He gave me the envelope. I ripped it open and it said Mars 1 million BC. We're the aliens on this planet. That we probably were rescued off of Mars. The actual aliens on planet Earth is us.
Hello, beautiful people. Today, as you can tell, we are at a very beautiful space. This is Robert Monroe's cabin. We're at the Monroe Institute right now, going through the Gateway program, which is their flagship program about exploring consciousness in out-of-body states. And today we're having a very powerful legacy interview with none other than Joe McMoneagle. He is known as Remote Viewer 001, one of the 6 out of the first psychic spies in the Army that is still alive. He also refers to his work as martial arts for the mind. And I'm here with my co-steward in this conversation, Sky Cowans, and really today is all about intersecting consciousness, out-of-body states, remote viewing, the future, the past, the nature of reality. So for the next however long we're here, I just invite everyone to open their minds, open their hearts to possibilities, and I'll hand it over to Sky to start us off.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for your presence.
But
We've been here journeying and exploring these states. And I know that you have a lifetime of experience in these realms.
yeah.
So we're going to dive into all of that. And you have a revered career and would love for you to just share for everyone watching some of the highlights of your career.
Oh goodness. Well, my career started with leaving Miami, Florida. That's where I was born. I had to get out of the state. It was just too difficult there for me. I grew up in kind of a ghetto, and I wasn't a happy place. So I decided to join the Army. I actually had 2 scholarships to 2 different schools. One was the University of Miami, which was a football scholarship. And I went there and bought the books and signed up for the courses and all of that. And in the orientation class, it was in this really big room. And there were a lot of people, and the guy up front was talking, the young man up front, and I couldn't even hear him. And another young man stopped, and he handed me an IBM card, and it had a number on it. He said, "That's your student number, memorize it." And I looked at it, it was like 18 digits. And I said, "Well, I'm not going to learn anything here." Everybody was talking. It was like a big party. So I said to the guy to my right, I said, "Do you need any books?" He said, "I'll take that one." And I gave all my books away and went downtown and joined the Army. And that wasn't a thing you did back then. That was in August 1964. And when I went in the Army, I actually did really well. My scores were really high. So I got recruited for intelligence. I was concerned about going to Vietnam, but since I actually graduated in, first place, first class, second place, second class, first place, third class, they block allocated everybody to Vietnam, and I went to the Bahamas. So I actually spent 18 months on a Luther in the Bahamas, which was in itself an education. This is the only Class 5 hurricane I've ever been in my life, which almost killed us. It was pretty severe. When I left there, then I went to Vietnam. I spent almost 15 years overseas. doing counterintelligence, counterterrorism, what we call radio recon, that kind of stuff. And then finally got brought back to the States, which is kind of a funny thing because they wanted me to come back to the headquarters in Arlington. And I didn't want to be there because you push papers in a headquarters. And I had been doing a real mission for all that time overseas. So I called the Pentagon and tried to get out of it. And they wouldn't do it. They said some 3-star asked for me. I said, no, I don't want to go to the headquarters. So I said, what's my DLET score? That's a test you take for language. And they said, you matched them both. I said, great. What's the one language everybody in the Army needs? They said, Mandarin, Chinese Mandarin. Great. I want to read it, write it, and speak it. And they said, well, in that case, we'll send you to Monterey. You'll be there for 2 years. So I went to Monterey. So I was in Monterey 1 hour, and I got a phone call from a 3-star. And he said, why are you in Monterey? And I said, the Army saw fit to send me here. He said, that's not going to work with me. You'll be in my office at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, or the entire sky will come down on you. So I packed my bags and went to the headquarters. And when I got to the headquarters, they promoted me to warrant, and I took over my MOS for the world, actually. And this project came up. The general, when he called, I was an advisor to the general. He called me in one day and he said, they're getting ready to start this really hinky project at Fort Meade. Hinky meant he couldn't trust it. Something was going to go wrong. He felt like he needed protection against it in some way. So he said, I want you to go out to Stanford Research and find out all you can about it. So I went out there and came back, and it turned out when I was out there, I asked so many questions. They said, well, you need to do UFO. You'll learn what it means, all the stuff it does. So I did 6 remote viewings. I had 5 first place matches and 1 very close.
Did you know what that was at the time?
No, I had no idea. In fact, I got in an argument over it. I was sitting in a windowless room. They showed me a picture of someone. They said that someone went somewhere. We don't know where. And we'd like you to tell us where that person is. And so I sat there for 15 minutes on this couch, looking around the room.
Eyes open.
Yeah. And I said, so what am I supposed to do? And he said, tell us where they are. I said, I don't know where they are. And Russell Tark said, just imagine where they are. And so I drew a picture. And the picture I drew was kind of a long building with a tall part with some columns in the front, and a couple decorative trees and a bicycle rack. And I said, it looks, I think it's some kind of an art museum because it's got a bunch of statues on one end. And it turned out it was the art museum on the Stanford campus. And that's where he was standing, right in front of the art museum. And I said, oh, wow, how did that happen? He said, well, that was really good. You did a really fine job. And I did 5 more, and they were just as easy. I just closed my eyes and imagined where they were. That's not really good to do remote viewing that way, because if you don't have any natural talent at all, you're going to really mess up. But evidently I had some kind of natural talent in it, so I went back and wrote a report for the general. He said, I have this great idea. I think you should be down there in the project, because then you can watch my back. And I said, please don't send me to the project. I knew it was a career killer. And I told him that. And he said, I'm sorry, I have to have somebody I can trust. And so you do what you do in the Army, you salute them and go. And I just did the best job I could.
Why do you think it was a career killer? Because it was in this psychic realm?
Here's the problem. I've actually done demonstrations for senators and committees that were very powerful committees. And I do a demonstration so they could understand exactly what it was and how it works. And one time when I did that, I had a senior senator, been there a long time, point his finger at me and say I was in league with the devil. I would burn in the fires of hell. And he wouldn't be in the room with me. And I thought, oh man, this is really out of control. And then another senator that very day gave me a hug and whispered in my ear. He says, "You're doing God's work, son. Keep it up." So, I mean, it's that kind of response is scary, especially when they're very powerful people. But the idea was it would be a 2-year project. We would train in it for a few months, go out in the world, target our own stuff, like the White House, the Pentagon, things like that, Langley, collect data. And after about a year, we would bring it all in and they turn it over to an independent agency and have them evaluate it for whether or not it was good or bad. And that way we could determine, the Army could say, this is a threat or not a threat. So the first target I did was a submarine, a new submarine. And it turns out it was the prototype for the Typhoon class submarine the Soviets had. Huge submarine, totally different. 2 hulls put together this way.
This was during the Cold War.
Yeah, it was during the Cold War. But it was being built in a building that was not directly connected to the harbor. So when the report went to the National Security Council, the analyst there, Robert Gates, said, "This is total fantasy. They wouldn't be building a submarine in a building you can't get to water." So he sent it back. And the admiral that brought it back, a man named Jake Stewart, I think was his name. What are you guys going to do with this? And I said, take it back. And he said, really? I said, take it back. I'll make them look at it. And he said, no, they're not going to look at it. So I said, well, okay. And I put a paper on top of the one that said total fantasy, RG. I put a paper on top of that. I said, fantasy will be launched in 112 days, Jay. So on the way, he went by the appropriate agency for taking pictures over the harbor, 114 days out. And it turns out that they launched it a few days earlier, and they caught all kinds of pictures of it in the harbor. They built 8 more and never knew it. So the prototype they got, that started everything. And then the idea of whether or not it was a threat went away, and we suddenly started getting tasking from 17 different intelligence agencies. And it didn't stop for 20-something years, 23 years.
So this being your first target, what was your response to being so accurate? Were you surprised by yourself?
I was surprised. I mean, I roughly drew a submarine and said it was really, really big. And they said, how big is it? I said, like 30 feet shy or short of the length of a Soviet aircraft carrier. Oh no, that's not possible. It's like total fantasy. Well, it's actually 33 feet shy of the length of the Soviet aircraft carrier. And it's 65 feet across the back. And it's just everything that I and a couple other of my partners there said turned out to be true. And they were actually able to capture a lot of photos of it. So it was a good forewarning of that particular style submarine. They would have never known about it otherwise, because they launched 8 more and they never knew they were launched. So it was an interesting experience. And I just kept getting better. After 7.5 years of supporting the Army with that, I retired, which was a rough retirement because almost right after I retired at age 38, I had 4 heart attacks and open heart surgery. And I think that was directly a result of the stress, because it was the stress that was killing the other members of the 6. The stress was terrible because nobody liked what we were doing, but they all wanted us to do it. So it was we were in kind of a weird position. You can sense when people don't like what you're doing, but they want you to do it anyway. It's like, ugh. And the other problem is, there's no way of knowing when you're doing remote viewing on something. So it's an easy way to violate the Constitution, the guarantee of privacy, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So we actually got together as remote viewers and decided that the Constitution would be our rule maker, our guide. And that upset people. Go ahead, nobody will know. No, I'll know, that kind of thing. So it was hard. After I retired, I knew there had been science research done. So I applied to the Stanford Research Institute, where they came up with the idea, and was hired. And I spent a number of years there, 4 or 5 years there. And when they closed the lab there and moved it to SAIC, Science Applications International Corporation, I went with it. And at the end of the program, 1995, the CIA rejected taking it over and shut it down. They said it never worked. So I was fired at SAIC, and I went to Laboratories for Fundamental Research at Palo Alto. And I was there until 18 months ago. So I have 38 years in the science side and 48 years in the collection side. And I've done a lot of demonstrations overseas and on national television, in a lot of places. And I found 12 of 24 missing people in Japan using it. So, and I do everything completely blind. Targeting, the intent of what I need to do is sealed in an envelope. I never see it. I just do whatever I feel is the thing I'm supposed to do.
Hello, beautiful family. Quick one today. I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you that have subscribed to this channel. Your subscription means more than you know. Even though it's free, what you're doing is you're empowering a whole channel to be able to do this every single day and continue showing up in the way that we can with all of our resources on hand. Thank you for contributing to the growth of this channel, for sharing it with the people that you love, for creating a conscious movement of individuals that are seeking the sovereignty and the divinity of their soul. This is why we're here. And if you haven't already and you're enjoying this content, I invite you now to look below on that little button that says subscribe and welcome you properly to this community. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being who you are and being pure love and radiating that with everyone that you see. Back to the episode.
You were telling us earlier that the remote viewing, also, if it's not well understood, could be a national security risk in many ways.
Oh, there's no secrets. There's nothing you can't penetrate with it. And now, the problem with it is it fails on its own. About 30 to 35% of the time that I do a remote viewing, it fails terribly. But you don't know. You don't know when it fails or when it's good. So you have to have at least some information about the target. And it's usually something about the particular targets that you want to know. In this case, with the submarine, it was a huge building. They knew something was going on inside, and they had targeted that building for intelligence for 5 years. They couldn't buy a picture the inside that building. So on the off chance it might work, they targeted us psychics, remote viewers on that building. And I and a man named Hartley Trent came up with a lot of information on this giant submarine. And everybody said, oh, this is nuts. It's a total fantasy. Well, it turned out to be true. The word spread like a forest fire. All the jobs that they couldn't solve, all the problems that they couldn't come up with answers for, started landing in our door. And most of them were life and death. You know, rescue somebody, stop somebody from being tortured, kidnappings. I mean, it was just all life and death stuff. So the stress was out of sight.
So there's a lot of information now about remote viewing that's out there. What is true remote viewing and what is not?
True remote viewing is you have got to be blind, totally blind when you work on the target. Anybody in the room with you has to be blind because you can read people. If somebody like a monitor or a trainer or somebody standing there and knows what the target is, you're going to pick that up from them. Mm-hmm. And so you're not giving them anything new. You're giving them the rote stuff, the stuff that nobody knows for sure if it's true or not. No, there's a major reason that goes the other direction, which is remote viewing is a skill. It's like a skill. It's like any martial art. When you're exposed to like full contact judo, you have to practice it a lot in order to make it effective. It's easy in the first year to memorize certain things, but that's not what makes you good. What makes you good is knowing what your opponent's going to do before he does it. You watch the eyes. The eyes are everything. Well, it takes 3 years just to get that done. And then the skill set has to be improved with counter moves, offensive moves, defensive moves. And so over time, your belts get different. And eventually you get to the black belt and you're really good at something. And you can compete and all that. Well, it's the same thing with remote viewing. It's like a martial art of the mind. You learn the methodology within the protocol, and that's a mistake a lot of people make. A lot of people think methodologies, how they do it, is the protocol. No, there's only one protocol, and that was written in 1972 at Stanford Research Institute, and that's you're blind. Anybody in the room with a viewer is blind, and there's a reason. If you're completely blind and you know you are, and you produce something of extreme value out of thin air, it changes you. You philosophically change. You start understanding that there's more to being human than what you see in the mirror. Okay? And as you progress in that, you start to understand there's gifts that humans have that no other animal on the planet has. And it's the reason we're still here. And the giant cave bear with the long nails and the savage teeth and the monster muscles, they're gone. They're long gone. We don't have any of those things, but we have the capacity up here to deal with things. We have like an almost automatic defense mechanism, and that's what's kept us alive from the very beginning. People don't realize that's why it has to be blind. It teaches you that you are better than what you see in the mirror. Now, people that cheat a little bit, they say, well, this is an event. Describe the event. Or this is a male, about 45 years old. Tell us more about him. Or whatever. Little nip. But when you're successful, and you have a really great success, you'll blame it on the hint. I never would have got that if I hadn't had the hint. So nothing gets better. Nothing progresses. You always think of yourself as a limited human being, and what you see in the mirror is all you are. That's all you get. That's not true about any human being.
So, blinds meaning the viewer and the monitor, they know nothing about the target.
Absolutely nothing.
And then someone on the other side, they know what the target is.
Oh, yeah, if you're supporting somebody,
Yeah.
they'll have a question that requires some intent. An example would be, as an example, in the Army, when we were applying it, we had really high results. It was like in the 70 to 80 percentile. And everybody said, oh, no, they got to be cheating. Because in the science side, they're only getting in the 30s, 35, that area. So why this huge difference? How come they're so good? And they don't know anything about the science. And the fact of the matter was, the types of targets we had, like if you had someone, a general that was kidnapped, and you needed to find him because he was taken by some terrorist organization, everybody in the room when you walked in had one intent: to find him and rescue him. So the remote viewer doesn't have to know that. You can feel it.
It's life
So
or death as well.
It's a common intent. Everybody wants to see it happen. That's a major thing that gets a remote viewer to the target, that produces the information.
Yeah, it's so interesting. There's this collective intelligence of shared intention, a desire for success, and then you have the viewer that knows nothing. They can feel that, and they're picking that up from the field.
But it's what guides them to the information.
Right.
It's like, if you look at any business on the planet, any business, the ones that are successful, they all have a common intent. They share it with their employees. All the employees know what the goal is. Everybody shares the same intent. There's an attention to the details. There's always a framework of details that get you to be successful. They have to become habit. They have to be done automatically. You learn over time. This is what works, right? Then you have an expectation for what happens, the result. The expectation for a certain result comes out of the knowledge of every time you apply it, it works. So that's kind of a feedback. So it's like a loop back in time, telling you did the right thing from a material standpoint to get the right result. Once you develop that understanding of the loop and understanding for that process, you run a successful business. Well, it also runs successful remote viewing. You take any of those elements away, and I guarantee a business will fail. It won't succeed, and it won't stay.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned earlier that the CIA eventually shut down this program. Years later, it was declassified to the public. Are you aware if these types of techniques are still being applied in intelligence agencies in that sense?
Like, outside of myself, I don't know if they are or aren't. I can tell you that I continued to support any tasking I got from any agency because I felt that was the right thing to do. I only stopped doing that about 2 years ago. So I know I was still supporting agencies, but it was always completely blind, so I didn't know what I was working on. I just gave them the results. And the fact they came back and asked me other things was pretty much an answer to whether or not it was working. I had great supporters out of 3 or 4 of the agencies at the deputy director level. So over time, you develop a reputation. There were a lot of people that were very pleased with the support I was giving them, so they would come back over and over. It's kind of like, imagine you're going to open a restaurant. In this case, you're going to start using psychics, okay? So you're going to open a restaurant, and you have a menu, which is the protocol. You have the methodologies, which is how you put it all together and serve it. So in this restaurant, you invite 17 different food, what do you call it? Food critics. Okay, they're world-class food critics. Well, that's the agency heads. They all come to the restaurant the first night it's open. They eat the meal, and they go away. And for the next weeks, over 23 years, they keep coming back to the restaurant. Now, tell me, is the food bad? I don't think so. Okay, so it's the same thing happened with the remote viewing. 23 straight years, agencies kept coming back. Some of them came back a few times. Others came back on an almost weekly basis. That's proof in itself. You're doing something right if somebody's using what you give them, and they keep coming back. I have a remote viewing series. It's one of the last things I did before I stopped doing remote viewing. I have a remote viewing series where I trapped a spy, trapped him for a certain amount of period of time. I say him now, but at the time I had no idea if it was a man or a woman. I had no idea what the age was, because my targeting material, the only thing that was shared with us in the lab was his social security number. So that was my targeting material. And every time they wanted to know where he was, I would just target the social security number. I did 3 drawings for 3 locations, just 3 drawings, and all 3 were exactly correct, almost perfect drawings. Then they came back and said, "Oh, you're really good. You're really good at telling us where he is. What's he doing?" So I told him he's working on a special piece of equipment inside a van so nobody could see it. And I drew that and gave him a lot of details on it. Well, that was evaluated by an independent agency, and they came back and said, "This is what he's building, and this is the frequency." And it was like, wow, how do you do that? And people have asked me later, how did you know it was microwave? How did you know the frequency? Well, I just drew the waveguide, told them what size it was. I mean, it's simple stuff, the remote viewing.
Because you say you don't see, but you perceive.
No, you perceive. People, because of the term remote viewing, people think that it's actually an act of seeing something. So the first thing people do is they close their eyes and try to see. When you close your eyes, you cut off all your other senses. Your smell, your taste, your touch, your emotion, everything you use to know what the outside world is, you cut it right off and you just start looking for something. The problem with that is the eyes are the number one sense to lie to you. We had this belief that we can walk into a room and we see everything. No, we don't. We only see the things that tell us what the room's for. Details, you're really sloppy about the details. You can put 10 people in a room for 30 seconds, and all 10 will give you a different story on what's in the room. Some will never mention the pictures on the wall. Some will never mention where the outlets are. You don't see everything. You just see enough to have the conclusion of what it's for, what it is, and that makes you happy. Well, we go through life that way. Everything. We never see all of anything. It's just what makes us comfortable with where we are. And the idea that everybody sees the same thing is totally wrong, because we're all in our own world. We all have developed differently, culturally, mentally, spiritually, in all ways. Every human being is different. It's just, we sort of have a bad way of bringing people up. And so remote viewing is not learning anything new. It's unlearning the old system and learning a new system of perception.
And you were sharing that we're all born with this ability, and it's more about unlearning. What bad habits do you feel we need to unlearn so you can do this?
The major one is, if you want to know the answer to something, you don't just collect a few bits of data and then leap to a conclusion, because you get an answer that's fairly close to being a good one, but it's not the right one, maybe. Or maybe it's one that's lacking something, so you don't get the full understanding for what it is you've just developed. In order to get all the information, to really use it to its nth degree, you really have to take your time and collect it in bits and pieces and then put it together again. And that's what remote viewing does. So it's you unlearn getting one or two facts and leaping to a conclusion. In remote viewing, you never leap to a conclusion. In fact, any conclusion is wrong. You just want the ground truth, the bits and pieces. Someone who understands the problem will see in those bits and pieces the answer that they're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that we are kind of conditioned to just look at reality and then just make assumptions and jump to conclusions that are really a confirmation bias of our own beliefs.
Exactly.
And so we need to let go of what we think we know in order to open up. And we've been learning here this week on how to open to this field of infinite potential and possibility.
Exactly. It's a lot of information we're swimming in. I think the thing that fools us most, excuse me, when we use our eyes and we see what's around us, we fail to understand that what we're actually seeing is just fields of energy. Okay, that the mind is locked up here. It's inside a bone box. It has no capacity for understanding all this, but it's got built-in sensors for testing everything. You got eyes and ears and smell, and you can feel heat and cold. You can rub your hand across things and tell texture. There's all kinds of ways of testing this. The problem is, it's never perfect. It's always translated some ways. You also have the ego involved in it, and the ego will fool you a lot because the ego wants to see certain things happen for your benefit. So it'll mask things even. So when you start looking at it that way, perception then becomes a really a needed product. You really need to be able to perceive properly. And remote viewing is letting go of the ways that the sensors work originally, because you've been kind of forced into using them that way since birth. So remote viewing is more unlearning the old habits and replacing them with new habits that give you a perception versus a sight, a seeing of something. Because the seeing's incomplete. It just doesn't work well.
Why do you feel you were naturally gifted at this?
I never thought I was. People gravitated to me because in my job in Vietnam and other places where risk was high, I was lucky. I was Mr. Lucky. I always walked through places without any hurt. I'd be reading a book out by the sandbag wall of the base camp, and I'd suddenly get a feeling like I didn't want to be there. So I get up and I go in a bunker and light a candle and read by the candle. And 10 minutes later, we get shelled. And so people noticed that. So whenever I was sitting around doing whatever I was doing, when they saw me get up and walk in a bunker, everybody headed for bunkers because they knew something was about to happen. There were just so many things like that. Or in the radio recon business, we'd be in the jungle or something, and I might just suddenly freeze. I'd stop, And they say, what's wrong? And I say, I don't know. What I think was happening is I was picking up odor with my nose that I wasn't consciously understanding, but it was a warning. And my mind was quick enough to understand the warning and order me to stop. When anybody else would override it, just keep walking and maybe walk right into an ambush. And I would stop and I just watch my surroundings. I crouch down, watch my surroundings, and I might see the cigarette when it was lit across the little clearing where the ambush was set up, that kind of thing. It just, you pay attention to your senses, not to your beliefs. You open to reality, I think. It's just different.
Yeah. You were mentioning how you've had many heart attacks. You actually told us yesterday that you were poisoned, saw a different layer, let's say, of reality. And if I'm here touching this physical matter, would you say that this is the primary foundation of reality, or have you discovered there's something much deeper to reality?
It's something much deeper. Where my thoughts were before were very materialistic. You know, it was like everybody should, work harder for more money so you can buy more things and all that kind of stuff. Since then, I spent more time thinking about the idea that you should be comfortable with the job you're in. If there's something about it that irritates you, you should change jobs. A lot of people would go, oh God, no, that would scare me to death. No, if you got to go to another state even, why not? It's like, I don't particularly care for getting on airplanes, but I'll travel anywhere simply because I'm going to learn something new. When I meet people, it brings in a whole thing about prejudice for me, because every person I meet is different, and it reminds me that we do things unconsciously according to our prejudices. For instance, fat people usually hang around with fat people. Skinny people hang around with skinny people. Blonde people hang around with blonde people. Curly-haired people hang around with curly-haired people. Dark people hang with dark people. South American people hang with South American people. There's so many prejudices we swim in because it makes us comfortable. I like being uncomfortable. I like being in a nomadic tribal get-together where I have no idea what the customs are, and wow, am I going to have some fun here, because I'm going to learn everything I can. It's just, I've learned that everything is of value, especially people. I don't care what the person looks like. I don't care where they're from. I don't care what language they speak. I know I'm going to learn something from that person. And so I had this huge curiosity. And I would rather have that than go around going, no, I don't want to be with that. I don't want to be with that. I don't want to be there. I don't want to go there. That's a horrible life. Yeah.
In the near-death state, you were mentioning to us yesterday that you realize that everyone in your surroundings is you. Can you explain that a little deeper?
Yeah. Here's some of the profound things I came to understand from a near-death experience. I've actually had three, and the third one was the most profound one, because I was supposedly clinically dead for 38 minutes. I don't believe that for a second. I probably had a shallow breath every now and then, or a single heartbeat every now and then. It's just not physically possible that I would have lasted 38 minutes without oxygen. The psychiatrist thought I was badly damaged, because after the near-death experience, I kept saying, God's a white light, you can't die, you can't cease to exist. Obviously, he's got dead brain cells. He lost a lot of brain cells. But I wouldn't give it up, and they did. So know that I was probably shallow breathing or whatever, but I was out of body the whole time watching everything until I got put somewhere where I no longer had a body and I was talking to some entity. I have no idea if it was God or not, but I can tell you this. What I learned in that is that I as a human being live in my own world, and my world is constructed so that I'm tangent with other people. And I have people in my world that are constant companions, like my wife. We just had our 41st anniversary. So these are important things. But what I didn't understand is that every decision I ever made, everything I ever thought or felt I needed to do or not do, had an experiential effect on me. But it's a very tiny experience. It's like a little node. And then the node has two things in connection with it. It has time and it has space. And that means it happened in a certain place in time. And so it builds kind of a matrix. And over a lifetime, this matrix becomes very complicated. But it's always a node here, a node here, a node here. And it's always in tangent with someone else's world. So at the time of death, there's a statement people make sometimes. It's like, and then I reviewed my entire life instantaneously. And you go, yeah, right. Okay. It happens. It happened to me. And when it did, I realized this hollow matrix was filled completely with all the people that were part of me or total strangers in tangent with me, how my experience affected them. In other words, they had part of my experience. I didn't even know it. And it fills that matrix up completely. And when you see that matrix filled up completely, you're actually seeing yourself as you actually are. It's like taking a paintbrush and there's a million colors and you're dipping in all the colors and then you paint yourself with them and it's indelible. You can never get it off. Okay. So what you see is what you are. You've earned it all. In other words, everything good, everything bad, everything you've ever had in your entire life is because of what you did, what you planned, what you thought. It's all your fault. And you can't change it. You're stuck. Or maybe you can, I don't know. Maybe if I died completely, I might find that I can come back again and do it over and learn something else and fulfill that matrix in a different way. But it's all about experience because it's the only thing you could take with you when you die. You carry everything you've experienced with you and then some. But the and then some you get surprised by. That's like delivered right at death. So why? Well, I think it's because it's intended to deliver knowledge to the grand engineer. Whatever we consider God to be, we're part of. And that's the way the engineer of the entire universe, whatever knowledgeable entity put it all together, it has no idea what it is, but we help it understand. And we understand that the limits of good, bad, ugly, beautiful, all those things, because everything's got a good part and a bad part. It's kind of like a giant AI system or something that you can't lie to. Which incidentally, that's what AI systems will do. If you lie to them, they'll lie back. So they're not so smart as you think. Anyway, that's moving off the top.
Well, so in F3 of these near-death experiences, you had a similar thing happen with shared.
It kind of in a way, each one was absolutely reflected back on why I was having it. So it's like my one near-death experience as an example. I had sepsis. It was the second time I had sepsis in the hospital. That's a raging infection that invades your body. You have it everywhere. They call it MRSA in the hospital. It will kill people. They have no antibiotics that will fight it. By the time you have MRSA twice, you're in deep problems because any defense against it is gone. Well, I had MRSA twice, and the second time I got it, I knew by the time I was unconscious and partially delirious that I was probably going to die. I knew that because I had over 107 temperature, and I couldn't become conscious. I had to be unconscious. And the whole time I was thinking, geez, I really don't really want to die, but I think I'm going to have to this time because it's the only way I can get out of the difficulty. And at the time, I was imagining myself standing on a square of white tiles. And as I was standing there, I felt the tiles were representative of my energy. And they started disappearing one at a time, just fading away. And it was getting smaller and smaller, the thing I was standing on. And I looked at that as I don't have enough energy to be here much longer. So I decided it's okay. I'm going to let go and just go. In other words, I was copacetic with the idea of death. As soon as I made that decision, I'm down to like 4 tiles, standing on my tiptoes on 4 tiles. I felt this hand on my arm, and my wife says, "Don't you dare leave me." And I went,
Yes, ma'am.
It started stealing energy from people walking down the hallway, the doctor going in and out. I'm just like pinching energy up on it, trying to build tiles back. And I fought it off, and I survived. And the doctors don't know how I did because it was the second time I had MRSA, and it was just, my body was just filled with it. So, it's like somebody's in charge, but it's not me. But it's me that makes the decisions, and that's why I get to experience so many things, I guess. I don't know.
What was the entity that you were communicating with on the other side?
No idea.
What were they saying?
About the time I was feeling extremely comfortable and not wanting to go anywhere else, it said, "I'm sorry, but you have to leave." And now I knew I had no body. I was just there. But in being there, I started checking out there, looking for something to hold on to. I didn't have any way of holding on to it. It was stupid. And then there was a pop, and I sat up, and I was naked under a sheet. I had tubes up my nose and all kinds of IVs. And I looked to my left. There was a German patient laying next to me in another bed. And I said, "Hey, it's okay." He was looking like he was going to panic. And I said, "It's all right, man. God's white light. You can't die." And he ran out of the room. He told the doctor I had blue flames coming out of my eyes. I think he was as crazy as I was. But that was pretty funny. And they came in, of course, and sedated me, and I went again. But the next day I was on a gurney being lifted into a stretch limo. They put my gurney on top of the seats, and I had a mask taped down on my face, and they put tinfoil on the windows. They weren't sure how I had this problem. They felt that I probably had been poisoned. They didn't know if I was or not. And they thought somebody tried to kill me. And they weren't sure if is it the Russians or the Czechs or the Hungarians, or they just didn't know. It was Cold War time, and so they wanted everybody to think I was dead. And they took me 250 miles away to Munich, put me in a wing of a rest home. I spent 2 weeks there. The psychiatrist trying to convince me that God's not a white light. You do have to die. I wouldn't buy it. So,
After having had all of these experiences, do you have a belief of what this creator might be?
I have no idea. I just know our ability to envision whatever, I call it grand engineer, because I don't know. I don't even like using the term God because I don't think it encompasses it properly. It doesn't actually describe what we're talking about here. It's like an all-consuming energy or something. And I don't think we know. And the idea that man can decide what a God looks like or what God is and what it does, I think it's one of our great problems. We have to mature out of that. We have to come to understand, no, it's what's in our heart that matters. All the ills on this planet would go away if we paid attention to our own heart and what we do, how we think, what we do, how we consider or don't consider other human beings. It's got nothing to do with a God. The fact that people create specific things about God is a form of empowerment that they try to then exercise over others. And if the two don't agree, then you got a war or something going on. It's a waste of time. You know, I think if everybody paid attention to how we should be as a compassionate being, then we would solve all the problems. But no, everybody wants to, I don't know, have the power over somebody or be in charge. I think it's ego. It just takes over with some people.
There was a point in your career where they sent you to a man named Robert Monroe's home, and they said, this man is going to train you in out-of-body states. And eventually, you were telling me the romance story there. You live here, very nearby, which is why you're here with us today. What do you feel Robert Monroe was his legacy on you around out-of-body and anything else that he might have left behind for you?
It's kind of interesting because my first trip here, I came because I wanted to, because walking through a Barnes & Noble, I saw a book laying face down on the floor. It was open and laying face down. I thought, oh my God, it's going to get dirty. So I picked it up and turned it over, and it was Journeys Out of the Body. And I looked around to see if anybody was looking, and, took it up and bought it when nobody was at the cash register. I didn't want anybody to know, but that was like before I ever retired from the Army. So I knew about him, and I was very interested in this experience because I actually had other soldiers tell me things that had been badly wounded. And they told me in great confidence. They didn't want anybody to know that they had these experiences. And it was very similar to what Bob was writing about, being out of body and looking down on your body, that sort of thing. Well, that's all I knew at the time. When they started the project and I became part of the project, I came back out here to talk to Bob about it. I wanted to find out if the sound products he used would be of any help, because as a remote viewer, the problems I was having is I couldn't get comfortable with being a certain way. And I thought with the sound product that he had, that he could help me with that. I couldn't empty my mind, what I call my cool down period, which is prepping my mind for remote viewing, was getting longer and longer. Yeah, it was almost in excess of an hour at one point. And so I came out here to talk to him about it. Well, he made a tape for me. It was a 10 tape, what they call a 10 tape. I call it the mule. because you use it for everything. And when he made a really nice tape for me, he just tweaked it a little bit. And I used it for a long time. But tapes stretch. And eventually my tape started stretching and made weird sounds. So I came back and saw him and gave him the tape. Said, Mom, I need a new tape. And he threw it in the trash and walked away. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I need another tape. No, you don't. Just close your eyes and remember what it sounded like. So today you can hook me up to an EEG and I can close my eyes and remember 10, 12, 15, 21.
All the focus moves.
Yeah, my brain synchronicity will change. It becomes a habit. You can just lay back and remember it and your brain goes right into sync. So it cut my cool down period from almost an hour to 3 minutes. And it made everything way easier for me. Well, anyway, that's what happened. And then later in my career as a remote viewer, about a year before I retired, the Department of Defense wanted to find out if the spontaneous out-of-bodies I've been having since my third near-death experience, if I could use that to actually go to a target and collect information while out of the body. They wanted to see if it was better or worse than remote viewing. So they hired Bob Monroe. They actually paid him to teach me how to generate an out-of-body and maintain it to do that. So on Thursday night, when I finish my remote viewings every week, I drive out here. I get here about 1 in the morning. I would get up in the morning, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we'd work all day in the lab and hang out together.
Was it in this room?
Not this room, no. It was down in the lab where they had, I designed a isolation chamber, a black box down there, and built it for him. And that's where he put me in. So we did that all 3 days. And then Monday morning at 4 a.m., I get up at 4, fill a thermos with coffee, and drive to Fort Meade and go back to remote viewing. I did that for 14 months. He taught me everything I need to know about out-of-body. So eventually I was able to do an out-of-body target. And it's a huge waste of time for collecting information. And there's 2 reasons why. The first one is everything's a distraction. When you're backing out of your body, if you're back into a crystal chandelier, it's like, oh, this is like crazy, man. You're in there for 3 hours and you forget all about what you're supposed to do. And then you wake up the next day and you're, how did I get back in my body? You know, that kind of thing. So everything's a distraction. And to be blind to a target, they might give you a picture of the building and say, that's the building you need to find. Well, it takes 18 to 22 out-of-bodies just to find the building. You're flying all over the place looking for the damn building. And it's hard to produce and maintain the out-of-body. So it's hard to do that. And then when you find the building, then you get distracted again. Like passing through a wall is no big deal. Passing through these logs is a little bit bigger deal. What's really cool is when you pass through 10 inches of steel on a vault door. It's like, oh yeah, it's like scratching your back. You feel every molecule passing through and rubbing up against steel molecules. It's just very weird. So by the time I finally got the information they wanted, I had to push my face into this thing and then wake myself up, and they wanted a front view, top view, end view, cutaway, knowledge about everything in it and what it did and all that. So I did that and mailed it to them. And I think it was maybe 4 or 5 weeks went by, and these 2 guys showed up at my home, and they said, we need to talk to you about that target you did. So I said, fine. So we're sitting in the living room, and he says, one of them said, where did you take high energy physics? And I said, I don't even have a degree. And they said, okay. Who do you know that's a high energy physicist? And I said, well, I know one, but I only knew him for like 6 months. That was Al Putoff, and he's gone. But Ed May is a low energy physicist. And outside that, no, I don't know anybody like that. And they said, okay, where do you check your books out? The library. And I said, oh, God, there's 2 libraries. I'll give you a permission letter. You can go ask them. I just check out fiction, Grisham, stuff like that. And he says, okay. And about then I'm thinking, these guys think I'm lying, that I just drew something and sent it to them. It made me angry. So I got to thinking about it, and I cooked on it for about a month. And I came up with this idea. The thing I actually drew was put together with copper wires. I said, I could put that in an acrylic block, run coolant through it, turn it into life fiber, change it a little bit, and make it operate about 10 to 20,000 times faster, about the size of 2 packs of cigarettes, and they could carry it in your pocket. So I did that. I redesigned it, crushed it down, turned it into a light fiber device, and drew front view, top view, end view, cut away, and told them all the parts were. And I rolled it up, sent it to the same place. 7 a.m. the next day after they got it, they're banging on my door. So I said, what do you want? They said, we want to see your drafting table. Took me in, tore the leather top right off my drafting table. They were afraid the pencil might have pressed through too hard. They were really ticked off. You're not supposed to do that.
What was the device?
I can't tell you that. They were really angry. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. Nobody said anything about what, come on, guys. And it was like, you're going to sign an NDA or we're not leaving. I had to sign an NDA. I'd never do that again. I never talk about it. And I never discuss what it was and all that kind of stuff. And then they went away happy. But I got a letter from the people that had me training to do this. No more. Don't go out of body anymore. So, okay, I won't go out of body, I promise. Except every other night. It's ridiculous. But collecting intelligence, if you're out of body and you're describing a person you're standing right in front of, if they want to know where was he born and where did he go to school, you can't tell them. You can't even ask it. But if it's remote viewing, you can give a description of the guy. And if they say, where did he go to school? There's a little wire that connects him to the school he went to. And there's a little wire that connects him to the woman he married. And there's a little wire that connects him to his 2 sons and what they do for a living. Everything's a matrix. It's all interlocked. One thing's tied to another. So you can get there. The remote viewing is maybe not as complete, maybe not as accurate, but you can get information on just about anything, anytime. It's faster. I also think it's probably a little more accurate if you spend time with it. But, remember, it's a martial art of the mind. You can't just jump in and become a world-class viewer. You have to actually spend time practicing and putting the skill set together. At the very beginning, when you have a target, you don't know if you're coming in the front door or the back door, through the basement or through the roof. You have no discipline yet. You can still say things about the target that are of value, but it's limited. You have to practice and develop the new habits so things become more automatic and you start fulfilling the expansion of the learning of the skill set, that kind of thing.
So as we've been here learning these methods, what advice do you have for us as we're just learning?
View it like a martial art. If you if you really, really want to get it a lot better at it, then you need to practice it at least one remote viewing a day. I do that still now, and I've been doing it for 48 years. It's a language. It's a language that develops between the subconscious and the conscious. I'm not sure the subconscious has a language. So what it does is it borrows from the conscious mind. So you have to learn why it gives you certain things and why it doesn't. Why in some objects there's some things wrong and some things right. It's almost like it borrows things from the conscious mind that are close but not perfect, because you've never seen perfect. You've only seen close. So it borrows that says, go there and start. So if you have an image of something like, I don't know, a swing set in the backyard, you have to take that image and tear it apart and try to figure out what parts of it are pertinent to the problem and which parts aren't. And you can do that by testing it. Is this like, take one piece of it and say, how do we feel about this being part of the actual target? And maybe your body or your mind will tell you that doesn't feel right for some reason, so you discard it and you take another piece. So you got to find out which little pieces of that target or that image are applicable and which aren't. And over time, you build a picture of what the target actually is, and then you can make statements about it that are descriptive. But you can't make a leap and say, it's a swing set in the backyard, because it's never the swing set in the backyard. It's kind of like it, but for other reasons. So you have to determine what those reasons are. That's how it works. Yeah. Over time, it can become a great habit, and it can also get in the way. I was doing it so long, working in the lab for research purposes. Ed came up to me one day and he said, and we were in Palo Alto at the laboratories for fundamental research. He said, Joe, I want you to get a really good rest this weekend. Don't do anything. Just lay around, sleep, and get a lot of rest. Monday morning, we're going to wire you up for a special project, and we're going to get some good stuff out of it. And I said, no, Ed, we're not. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, I've already got your answer.
It's instant.
It's an automatic. It's like your habit becomes automatic over time. It kind of spoils a lot of stuff.
Do you feel now that you have an on-point intuition where you just know in your own life, like yes and no, you can make decisions very easily because you've trained in this other way?
Well, you can and you can't. Remember I said in the beginning, there's like 35% of everything I do will fail. So you still can't trust it. You have to be really careful what you take in and believe is absolute bottom level truth. You can still be fooled. Your ego's still in charge. Wants to be in charge, wants to tell you what to do. It'll take things that are dead accurate that you got intuitively and stretch it and bend it, tie knots in it, and hand it back to you. And it's not a good idea to like automatically just take something and believe it. I would test it over a period of time, and then I might accept it. There's only one time when I think it really works well, and that's the time. That's times when there's a threat or a possibility of harm coming to someone. I had a really good friend. He was a doctor. I met him in give me a second, in France, in Paris. Ran into him on the street. We had dinner together, and he wanted to talk about some things, and I said, great. and we were at this hotel having a second dinner together the following night. And he said, I had a paper I wanted to show you, but it's over in my hotel. I was staying in that hotel where we were having dinner, but he was in a different hotel, and I had invited him there for dinner. So we're talking. He says, I got to go get this paper. So he got up and left. And as he disappeared around the corner, I thought, oh my God. No, it was in England. It was in London, because I thought the thing that popped in my head was, God, I hope he looks the right way, because I knew he was going to cross the street. And in England, Americans look the wrong way, because they always look left. You got to look right, because they're driving on the left side.
Yeah.
We didn't. He looked the wrong way. He was killed instantly by a cab doing 50 miles an hour. And I saw it, and I started to get out of my chair, and I knew I would never catch him. And I just sat back and went, maybe I'm wrong. No, I wasn't wrong. Not enough time, wrong place, wrong everything. So that's kind of a downside to it. Sometimes it can be useful, sometimes it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I'd love to explore for a moment the evolution of civilizations and humans. Yesterday, when you were with our group, you were talking to us about how, when we get too close to developing these types of nuclear technologies, we get reset back into sticks.
Oh, yeah, I remember, yeah.
What is that about?
Well, what I was talking about is there's a level of maturity that humans, that humanity just has never achieved. And it has a lot to do with why and how we do things. A lot of our discoveries are accidental, and a lot of our discoveries are deliberate. But whenever we discover something, and we discover that we can do something that's never been done before, the one question we don't ask ourselves is, should we? Because you can doesn't mean you should. And we don't have that maturity yet. You make a discovery like of nuclear power, and what's the first thing we do with it? We build a bomb. I mean, why? Why didn't we go to how much energy can we produce with this that can supply homes and businesses and that sort of thing? We didn't go there. We went right to bomb. And after we detonated the first one, 2 UFOs showed up. And that was at Trinity Site in Mexico. That's the first time people saw UFOs. And they were around before, but they considered them differently. They were spiritually produced or religious objects. No, this was 2 UFOs showed up. So the bomb had an effect that brought, I think, the true inhabitants of our planets out in the open. It scared them. So nuclear energy tears and rips reality, and it probably is a threat to them in some way. But we made a bomb, and what did we do with it? Well, we ended the war faster by nuking 2 cities full of innocent people. The excuse is, well, if we had invaded Japan, it would have been a lot worse. There was no reason to even invade Japan. We could have blockaded it. It would have capitulated in a month. That's crazy. No, we nuked them to see what the bombs would do. That's what I think was what the decision making was about. They try to say no, it was to save lives. Whose? I mean, it didn't save the people in the 2 cities.
Yeah, it's very interesting that there's a consistent theme of UFOs showing up around nuclear sites.
Oh, absolutely. And there's reasons for it. I think we don't understand what a nuke going off does to time-space. I could tell you it has a measurable effect because the sun does. You know, a flare off the sun is bad enough. It can end whole life streams on planets close enough to it. You know, they could be where Earth is or even further out. And if we're ever hit directly with a flare, it's going to be a real awakening. But the point being that we should have the maturity enough to know when not to do something, but we don't. We always want to go to the extreme. And I think that tells other entities that we're too much a risk. We're a risk because look at it this way. That was nuclear energy. Now they're all over us about it. And the reason why is because we did it anyway. So I think with the implementation of AI, that's going to drive us to a new discovery. And that discovery may be even more threatening. And that threat will be something like, maybe we'll figure out how to interdimensionally jump star to star. That's how they do it. All these advanced entities in our universe visit one another, I think, probably on a more common basis than we think. They just jump star to star. It's like instantaneous. It's done through interdimensional travel. Maybe we're going to discover that. And I will tell you, if we discover that, and we can actually have the possibility of jumping star to star, do you think for a second we won't put a nuke in the back closet? We're not going to go without one. They know that. And because they know that, we were going to become the greatest threat to advanced civilizations that you can imagine. What we'll do is we'll go through another great flood, which is on the books of every nation on the planet.
Atlantis.
And back to sticks and stones again. And we'll have to come all the way up through the development period again to learn maturity and restraint and all these things that humans don't have. And I don't know about you guys, but I would much rather see it happen now than after another trip or 2 or 3 from sticks and stones. That doesn't make any sense to me. You know, any entity out there that can jump planet to planet is 500,000 years ahead of us. And we're here, they're there. And we have this idea that we're going to meet and get something of value from them. No, it's never going to happen. If we brought those two civilizations together, it would destroy both. And I know that in my heart of hearts. So we're never going to have a close encounter with an entity, a true entity. I think the close encounters with the Greys and this and that, I think those are robots. That's why they're so indifferent to humans.
I had a conversation with Whitley Strieber on the podcast as well.
Yeah.
And
Does he think that same way?
I don't want to put words in his mouth, but yeah.
I mean, they grow their robots, okay. We make ours out of plastic and steel. It's just, they're that far advanced.
And
Their UFOs are actually partially grown. That's very evident.
there's also the theory that the Greys are potentially some version of us in the future that maybe were AI created of some
Maybe. May very well be.
evolutionary theory.
Yeah.
I feel like the threads of this conversation talking about our evolution as humans and the connection between entities and species that may have interests in Earth. There's probably many alien species that are here and interested in us and studying us.
Oh, I think so, because we're in that developmental stage where we should be learning.
Right.
And we've been stagnant for probably 5
Which
restarts or something.
it feels like there's like a small percentage of the population that's in that stagnancy that's running everything, and there's actually a large percentage of people that are on a frequency and consciousness that is higher.
And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I blame it all on politicians. I'm sorry, but that's where I go, because politicians can do anything they want to do with the people they're representing. And usually it's for power or money. That's today. In the past, power or money. The future, power or money. I mean, that seems to be the driving thing with political systems. And in our case, it has a lot to do with why we go to war. That comes out of political necessity or political want. If the politicians' kids were the first one on the battle line, I guarantee you we'd stop having wars.
Is it systemic, or is it around maturity and consciousness?
It's around maturity and consciousness. It's understanding that money's material things have nothing to do with true love, true advancement, true generosity, true security, true everything. I may be a true idealist because I've been in a lot of, I don't know if I can say shitholes, but I have been. And I am tired of seeing half of humanity needing food or clothing or shelter or whatever. It's not right. It's just not right. Everybody I've ever met, even people, my enemies, I went to Russia and met my counterparts, and they're just like me. I mean, come on. Everybody in every army on this planet, aside from maybe dictators, are there because they will defend their country like we defend ours. Okay, so why not be friends? And then we can drink together and party. Seriously, because they're professionals like I'm a professional. I can sit and drink with ex-Soviet KGB officers. They were doing a job just like I do a job to defend their country or whatever they believe in, and rightfully so, except under the Soviet tradition, it was more of a dictatorship. They were doing it to gain more power over more people. So that's inappropriate. That's the same as making a bad decision. But as just another country, everybody should have the right to negotiate and be friends. I think the real disaster is we don't have more people who make humans, women, in politics, young women who are in that period of time when they do make other humans, grow kids, and they will make decisions that are saner or have a more deeper thought behind it.
There's a woman has an innate ability to see a bigger picture for life. And I do feel and agree with you that it would be wonderful if there were more women in positions of leadership, because there's that ability to see the picture and to guide and lead in a way that maybe is more.
It's half the planet. Why not?
Yeah.
It may be more than half the planet now. When I first started in the military, my first assignment was a detachment. It was downrange in the Bahamas. When I say downrange, they had tracking stations that went all the way down into southern Africa that tracked satellite lifts out of Canaveral. And this was a station on Eleuthera in the Bahamas. It was a single Air Force base, but they only had one Air Force major running it. And then everybody else was an electrical engineer. William Bendix, R.C. Victor, that kind of thing. And they tracked the rockets out of Canaveral. The problem was the Bahamas were going independent from the United Kingdom. And so we were there for other reasons. We were there. America offered some help and assistance. They said, no, we'll do it on our own. Okay, that's cool. So we were there as air sea rescued. U.S. Army, air sea rescue. Does that make sense? Probably not. So we rescued people off of yachts. I rescued 7 people on a yacht once, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. I saved 7 people. Well, the guy that was the captain of the yacht had stolen it. The 2 other guys were drug runners on make some warrants out of Dade County, Florida, and the 3 women were hookers that had violated their paroles. And I mean, it was like a crazy thing. But there were other reasons we were there, which I can't talk about. But I got to experience a Class 5 hurricane there. We had gusts of wind over 180 knots. Everything was washed off the hilltop we were on, except the van we were in. And we had that chain to coral, 2-foot stakes in the ground, chained down. And we had the door welded shut, seam welded. So that's the other reason we survived. Me and my
That's you had mentioned essentially just the timeline, like you would work for 17 and the 19 agency.
Oh, yeah.
Just say in a concise way.
Yeah,
Sure. About your career and yeah.
When I was overseas, I worked for Army intelligence. Most of the time I was doing all kinds of classified missions, both in and outside of countries that I was in. As a result of that, that and my tours overseas, I did a lot of things that turned out really, really well. So I earned 2 meritorious service medals, 3 Army Commendation medals, 2 presidential citations, and a whole lot of other medals. I have actually a foreign award, which is the that doesn't matter.
The Legion of Merit.
Yeah, no, that came later. But so then I came back from overseas. I was assigned at the headquarters. I had been a sergeant first class for 12 and a half years. I could not get promoted. I had no idea why. So I asked the colonel in Germany, the last man I worked for, I said, why can't I get a promotion packet out the door? Everybody I've trained is advanced past me. And he said, first thing he said was lock the door. So I locked this door. He poured me a cup of coffee and he said, I'm going to tell you this one time. If we promote you, we lose you. That's all he said. So I was passed from colonel to colonel to colonel to colonel overseas, doing a very effective job of intelligence work. And that's why I couldn't get promoted. They never wanted to lose me. You get promoted, you get moved. So if you're really a miserable butthead, you get moved, you get your promotion, and you get moved. But that's not really true, but it feels that way. So I was brought back to the headquarters. What I didn't know is the general brought me back to the headquarters, and I reported to him on Monday like I was ordered to. I was an E7 when I walked in the door. I was a warrant officer when I walked out. He stripped the stripes off me, directed that I be a warrant officer, which is a commission from the Army. And that was a total surprise. I didn't have to go to a board, anything. He said, basically, the work you've done overseas for so long is indicative of the fact that you're probably the most experienced human being we've ever had. So I'm going to make you a warrant officer and put you in charge of your MOS. So I did that. And I also became advisor to him. He was a commander for all intelligence and security in the entire U.S. Army. I became a special advisor to the chief of intelligence at the Pentagon. I was also an advisor to the director of the National Security Agency and a couple other agencies. In the middle of all that, my desk was over the general's desk, the next floor up, and he could call me anytime. In fact, I'd be sitting at my desk talking to someone, and I'd say, general wants to see me. And they look at me like, how does he know that? What they didn't know is the general downstairs would take his American flag and tap the floor of the ceiling. I'd feel it with my foot. So I'd go downstairs to see him. And everybody was like, wow, how does he know that? I never told anybody that's how he called me. So they wanted to start this project called Stargate. And the general called me in his office and he said, they want to do this project in Fort Meade. It's a hinky project, which the word hinky for him meant, I don't trust it. It's going to bite me. I gotta know if I'm safe. So what I want you to do, because he would be in charge of it, and he had no idea what it was. So he sent me to Stanford Research Institute. While I was there getting information, they told me I'd do better if I tried it. I did 6 remote viewings. It's a record. It stands today. No one else has ever done almost 6 perfect remote viewings. So I came back and I wrote a report on the plane. So when I came back, I left the report on the general's desk and I went upstairs to my office and I opened my drawer and my desk was empty. What's going on? I went back down to the general's office, waited for him. When he came in, I asked him why my desk was empty. He said, you think you did that out at Stanford and nobody would know. He said, I'm sending you to Fort Meade. I'm putting you in that project. I actually got down on one knee and I said, General, please don't send me to Fort Meade. It's a career killer. And he said, I'm sorry. You're the only one I trust. Saluted the general and went to Fort Meade, did the best job I could. That's how I became remote viewer 001. I was one of the best remote viewers, probably not the best. My friend Harvey Trimp was even better. All of the original 6 were natural psychics. We didn't know we were, but they tested us and found that out. So I did 7.5 years at Fort Meade as a remote viewer. And I knew I could be a better remote viewer, but I didn't have access to the science. I kept asking for it, and they kept saying, look, scientists don't understand collection. No, the science makes collection better, in my mind. So I eventually got out of the Army. When I did, and I recovered from my heart attack and open heart surgery, I went out to California. I submitted an employment application for the lab at Stanford. It was immediately accepted. I spent 4 years or almost 5 years at the lab at Stanford, and they shut the program down there and moved the lab to Science Applications International Corporation, SAIC. So I went from there to that lab. They let me go from Stanford. I was hired by SAIC. I spent all the time there until they shut the program down in 1995. And I went from there to Laboratories for Fundamental Research, where we kept studying remote viewing. The entire time, even though they shut the program down, I kept being tasked by different agencies, NSA, DIA, CIA, the Army, the Navy. I don't think the Air Force ever tasked us, but I started my own company. It was called Intuitive Intelligence Applications. It's incorporated in the state of Virginia. And working in that company for 38 years, I was able to support a number of sheriff's office, to police departments, mining companies, publishing companies, you name it, I supported it. And I made a lot of money doing it and started donating at places. I gave an entire 401k I collected over 25 years to a beginning pharmaceutical company that discovered how to use allergies to fight diseases. I didn't know there's like 3,800 allergies, and they can actually use an allergy that's very similar to a disease, and by giving the allergy to a patient, the patient will produce a huge amount of antibodies to fight the allergy. But when they can't find it, they go to the disease and eradicate the disease. And it's so good. What it does is it teaches the body how to produce an antibody. So it's ever needed again, it can produce it. So, factually speaking, they had 8 women with terminal breast cancer who were stage 4. They were told to go home and get their affairs in order because they weren't going to last another 10 days. All 8 survived because of the new medications using the allergy idea. None of the medications cost more than $15. They all survived. Only one died, but she died from a heart ailment, not the breast cancer. And all of them that survived the breast cancer, it never reoccurred. They all are elderly women now. There are just so many right things about that pharmaceutical company. But they're doing battle with the big guys, and the big guys burned their lab to the ground twice, destroyed some of their results in their finding. So what they did, under some advice of different people, is they gave all the results to 2 different colleges on the East Coast, and all that information is shared among the 3 locations. So if anything happens, there are at least 2 other locations that have that material. And I did all the remote viewing to support them, and I did it in support of them. I gave them my 401k. Money's never mattered to me. What matters to me is humans. After all that work in remote viewing across I wrote 17 screenplays, sold 1. I wrote 7 fictional books which have not been published. There's publishers who want it badly, but they want to publish them under my real name, and I won't let them do that. It will detract from my 5 non-fiction books. I've been to Russia, Hungary, a number of countries, and interacted with them in the paranormal arena, dealing with experiments in remote viewing and consciousness. I was given a full membership in the Parapsychological Foundation. And I had no degree, when the requirement is a doctorate as a teacher, or a professor, or a doctorate as a researcher. I had no degree, and I got a full membership. I now have a degree in sociology, which I earned at age 75. I went to New York and graduated. Had to rush back because I had a serious surgery on my spine before I went up for my graduation. I developed MRSA, so I had to rush back and spent quite a bit of time in the hospital for that. I've got my body. I've dealt with pain my whole life in the 7 or 8 range. I have 2 9-inch rods, 2 21-inch rods in my spine, around 46 pins, 4 number 8 bolts holding my pelvic area together. I have a steel pen for my left knee and 3 bolts to my left hip, pin going into my left hip.
A cyborg at this point, right?
Oh no, I got more than that. I got right knee replaced twice, left knee replaced, right shoulder replaced twice, left arm, our left shoulder gone for 4 years. They recently put some accoutrements in there that they could put a shoulder part in backwards and upside down so I could lift my arm down that high
Battle scars.
and use it.
Getting a
again.
psychic.
Yeah. I just had spinal surgery again on this C23 right here. They went in through the front, and I'm learning to walk again. I'm learning to swallow again.
So
Right foot crushed, right hand crushed. Yes.
thank you for sharing all of this. You have this lifetime.
After I retired, or before I retired, when I was working in the lab with Robert Monroe to develop the capacity for going out of body for targeting, I was in the lab that weekend with him. It was a Saturday, and I was taking a nap because we had worked all day Friday and most of Saturday. And he woke me up. He said, a number of people just came from the Department of Defense. They brought a target with them, and they said they would like you to do the target. And I said, okay. He said, I don't know what the target is. I got the envelope in my shirt pocket if you need to know where it is. And I said, fine. And he said they have 7 GPS locations. And so I started out with the first GPS location. And because it was GPS location, I thought I was working planet Earth, of course. So the first result was a giant pyramid. And I said, oh, this must be a new discovery. And he said, why? Bob said, why? And I said, it's huge. It's bigger than the one at Giza. And it's much more refined. It has huge rooms in it. I wonder how they did that. And I was trying to describe all that to him, and I said, and there's these chambers where it appears they tried to put humans in there so they would survive over a long period of time because they had some kind of a cataclysm and they were going to die, and they wanted to be rescued, so they were going into a deep sleep of some kind. And I was talking about that. Then I went to the second target. I did that, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And when I got to the seventh, I couldn't go any further because I was tired. So, in talking about all that, I was talking at the very end about having this perception that these humans were identical to us, but they were like 12 feet tall. They were proportionately the same, but they had been eradicated by this cataclysm. And I thought, well, I don't know why they were bigger, but they were exactly like us. Every bit of it was like exactly like us. And then I came out and I said, where is this target? I remember even once I said about the sun looks weird. He said, I'm not interested in the sun. I'm interested in the target. So I came out and they told me, Bob has a target. We actually don't know. They just gave us a target to bring to you. So I asked Bob for the envelope. He gave me the envelope. And I ripped it open, and it said Mars 1 million BC. That made me angry. I get angry when I don't have something I can know ground truth about because it doesn't help me better my remote viewing. So I took everything and I said, I'm going to go to JPL next time I'm in California and find out if this is real. And they said, you'll never get any information. So I went to JPL my next trip to the California, and I walked up to the sales desk and I handed him the card with the GPSs on it. And I said, I'd like the 4x4 negatives for these locations. And all he did was look at the card. And he said, oh, this is the old city on Mars. And he pulled the drawer open and gave me a packet. Had all the 4x4 negatives in it. And these negatives are like 100 by 100 miles. And so I brought them back. I gave them to a professional photography studio. And I said, I'd like to have these locations on this card blown up from these negatives. And blow it up as large as you can. And they did that. And everything I described in the session with Bob is in my book. they were all exactly the same location. So the accuracy of the viewing was really high.
We saw the photo with the coordinates, and you could
Yeah.
see the pyramid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
You could actually see the pyramid. And but what blew me out of the box, really, I did not know any round planet in our solar system has a GPS system. I didn't know that, but they invented one for every moon, every planet, planetoid, everything. And so it surprised me that we were targeting Mars. But it also surprised me that there was a civilization on Mars that looked like us. So what I did is I spent a lot of time talking to people at JPL, and I got this guy there who we befriended each other, and I told him I was really interested in checking more of those negatives. So we started scouring these negatives, and we have discovered a lot of photographs of things on Mars that irrefutably shows that there was a civilization there. I mean, there's worn down foundations of buildings with streets. There's mines, entries to mines with dirt roads coming out of them. Vehicles, very, very almost destroyed vehicles on some of these roads. There's one impact crater that has half the impact the impact crater is 200 miles across. From the middle to the edge, there's a straight line. It's like a cliff. It comes out perfectly flat, does a 90 turn and drops. That's never in nature. You don't find that in nature. That's half that impact crater. I have no idea what that is. I can't remember what it is now. It's like a
Cannon, you said, right?
yeah, a cannonball sitting in a dune in the middle of nowhere. It's about 14 inches across. Could be a bowling ball. I have no idea. But there's a container, a shipping container. It's in the middle of some sand dunes next to an impact crater. There's nothing for 200 miles around it. And you can lay a grid over things and get an estimate of size. So we laid a grid on it, and it's about 33 feet long, 50.5 feet high, and 12.5 feet wide. We have no idea what's in it. It looks like a shipping container, but the doors are different. The top's a little different. But it's huge. I mean, you couldn't get it there on a rocket. It's that big. And it's just stuff all. There's one that I have that looks like a human femur. It's a bone laying right there on some rocks. And right next to it is a rock with a spoon, these big soup spoons you stir big pots with. There's a spoon sticking out of the rock. It's just embedded in the rock, and it's a spoon.
so what do you think was going on 1 million BC on Mars?
Obviously, there was some kind of a traumatic experience. And we do know that geologically, there was some kind of an object that passed through our solar system a long time ago, because 2 of the outer rim planets were pulled to the inner rim, and 2 inner rim planets, after that object went around the sun, it took 2 inner rim planets and pulled them to the outer rim. So they know that actually happened. At least that's what I was told. So, who knows? Maybe they lost the atmosphere or something damaged the atmosphere at the time. But what's really interesting is we have all these pictures, and it's mind-boggling. I can't go on and on and on about what's in the pictures. It's just unbelievable.
Did you also perceive beings that didn't look like humans?
Only one place, that was in the big pyramid, but I think they were robotic. They were maintaining the equipment in the pyramid. They were spider-like, and they had like 3 arms that were up, and 6 arms down, and they walked on the 6 arms, and the 3 were operating things or moving things. So, but they could go up walls or cross floors or walk on ceilings. It was kind of weird.
Do you tie this whole Mars story to how we ended up here on this planet?
I'll tell you what my feeling is. My feeling is we're the aliens on this planet. That we probably were rescued off of Mars, or at least whatever species we come from. Some of us may have been on Mars and brought here. The actual aliens on planet Earth is us. And the Earth itself has been occupied probably by an advanced entity that's been here way longer than us and can control whether or not we can see them or not see them. And I'm saying that because I've been to a number of places where I've seen humans walk, not humans, but aliens walk out of the side of a mountain. Just walk out. And they're right there. And you're like eating barbecue on the back porch. And you look eye to eye, and they smile, turn around and walk into the wall of the mountain. And it's like, you go there and look, there's no super secret doors or anything.
Interdimensional, right?
It's like bizarre. And I saw a blow up of a picture. It's from South America. It was shown to me by a researcher. It's a big blow up. It's like 2 by 2 feet. And it was a mapping plane, a little Cessna, and they put a big camera on the side, and they were photographing the ground to produce a plat for a guy who had a ranch that was like 30,000 acres. He never had a whole plat, so he was having them make a map of his plat. So it was flying every day. It'd take 2 or 3 pictures, come back, develop them, put them in a computer, add them to the plat. Well, in this particular picture, it was flying on the edge of a lake. And so to the left was a huge lake, and it was flying like partially over the lake, shooting the ground. And on these green covered hills were about 60 cows. And so it's flying this arch. It took 4 or 5 pictures. The pilot never saw a thing. He came back, they developed the pictures, and you can see part of the front of the plane, but you can see mostly to the right. And in front of the plane, right there, plain as day, there's about a 300-foot UFO coming out of the lake, and there's water pouring off the back of it. I mean, just washing off the back of it. It's huge. And it went right in front of the plane, and the pilot saw nothing. And the guy that showed it to me, he said, you got to look at it. You got to look at the picture again. I'm looking at the picture. I said, okay, there's cows, there's hills, there's a UFO, and there's a Cessna. He said, no, you got to look at it. So I keep looking. I'm not seeing anything he wants me to see. So I said, what? He said, look at the cows. So I looked at the cows, and they're all looking at the UFO. So cows see it, we don't. I mean, it's beautiful. All the cows are like.
No, I think it really just expands the way we perceive reality.
Yeah.
But everything that you've been
Yeah.
talking about, I know, this has been such a powerful, beautiful conversation. I wanted to ask Sky if you have anywhere you want to end today. But
Oh. I really resonated with what you were sharing about humans coming into the heart.
Yeah.
So if you could leave a message for everybody watching about how we can come into the heart and shift what's happening on the planet, what would you want to share?
Well, what I would say to everybody is that there's a perception that we have that the world we live in is shared by everyone. That we're all in the same world. We're not. We all are in different worlds. When we're apart, the best we can ever say is we believe somebody else when they tell us. The problem is it makes us, 2 things it does. It tells us that we're totally responsible for what happens to us, whether it's good or bad. the second thing is it tells me that any human being you meet, absolutely any human, doesn't matter, man, woman, child, doesn't matter, you can learn something from them, that they're of value because their world is different from mine. And I want to know as much as I can about it, because out of that knowledge comes friendship and comes a shared desire for the same things, which is everybody just wants to live their life and raise their family and be happy and have sufficient food and sufficient housing, sufficient everything. And we live in countries that are that strong that they can provide it, but they don't. Some come close to it. I was in Sweden at one time, and if you understand the population of Sweden, it's very small. It's a northern climate. It's a harsh northern climate. There's not a pothole anywhere in any of their roads. They have bridges all over the place. Beautiful buildings. Everything is so well kept and groomed. They don't pay enough tax for that to happen. But they get free medical, free education. Everything they need, they get. And nobody's hungry, and everybody lives in a house or an apartment or somewhere. And yeah, they're paying like 60% of their income for tax. But they don't need anything else. So the money they have left, they can do with it anything they want. They buy boats, they go skiing, they do all kinds of stuff. But nobody wants for anything. I don't understand why all places couldn't be like that. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I love this idea of curiosity and being able to learn anything from anyone and just approaching everyone with a curious and open mind, because I really do think that creates a lot of learning and us. It releases division. So thank you for that.
We just heard the bells, which means we're getting back into our practices here at the Monroe Institute, and just finishing off saying how much we appreciate you for your time, Joe, and not only your time, but your service for this country, for the world, and the profound impact you're having on consciousness and where we're headed as a species. So thank you for opening our minds, helping us maybe activate some of that more curious aspect of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the legacy that you're leaving behind. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.